All right. Hey guys, I wanted to come on. It's in the morning and it's pretty dark and gloomy out today. But I wanted to come on and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the whole lymphatic drainage stuff. And again, I'm just here sharing my experience, okay, and sharing my perspective. All right. Now, it's morning, okay, and I've been sleeping and I'm 57 years old. Things do not work as well as they did when I was 20, of course, right? My eyes are not too bad this morning. A couple of mornings around the holidays, I would wake up in the morning and my eyes are super puffy. I have completely hooded eyelids. I definitely was doing a little more manipulation to move that fluid out, which is great. And it's wonderful that we have those options to do that. But I want to caution you guys and remind you that when you have a puffy face and puffy eyelids and things like that, it's a sign of something deeper, okay? Now, granted, I'm getting old, okay? I'm getting older. Things are slowing down. And yeah, it's good to just kind of like support a system that is on its way in the opposite direction, okay? But for me personally, when I wake up in the morning and if my eyes are puffy, there's a reason. It's because I've eaten something that my body does not like, okay? No, I have been strict. Well, I say strict, not super strict, but I have been carnivore for 8 years. And my body absolutely thrives on meat, all kinds of meat, all kinds of, mostly red meat. I mean, I do best on red meat, but I do find with other meat and other animal foods, and I personally thrive on raw milk. That's my body, me personally, which means these foods make me feel amazing. And they don't give me any negatives whatsoever. Like they just make me feel amazing in every single way. And when I eat that way consistently, I feel great. I don't wake up with puffy eyes. I don't have any issues whatsoever. There's a lot of other things too that will happen if I continue to consume things that are not directly meat and milk, okay? So, and it has to be raw milk. Pasteurized milk is not my best friend, okay? Or pasteurized dairy. Now, I'm usually really good around the holidays. I just don't start eating a ton of junk and, I just don't do that. But when you're having people over and you're going to be at other people's houses and stuff, I'm surrounded by options that are not ideal, and I make the best choices that I can make. And sometimes I'll just have a little something because I feel like it, because I'm human. And I made a mozzarella and olive salad because my kids love that kind of stuff. And we had our holiday here with my kids and their partners. And I had a little bit of mozzarella and olive salad. And I had it a couple days in a row because we had a lot of leftover. And I tried to give it away. I ended up giving it away to a couple of people, but we still had quite a bit left over. I always make too much. I'd rather have too much than not enough. And I also made this little goat cheese. Well, I didn't make it. I bought it. This little goat cheese platter. And it had the dried fruit around the edges of it. Now, that definitely made my eyes a little puffy and kind of triggered me a little bit. And a lot of it is the stuff that it's brined in and, the oils and, that the mozzarella balls were in and all of that. I normally would have just used the fresh mozzarella, but I bought the little balls that were in the basil because I knew my kids would love that. And of course, I ended up having a little bit. And then my husband was buying some seafood for some friends, and he ended up bringing me home some fresh lobster. I don't love lobster, but I like lobster salad, and he knows that I like lobster salad. So he brought me home some fresh lobster for lobster salad. And I really didn't want it because I have to put mayonnaise in it, and I do use the Primal Kitchen mayonnaise. I don't make my own with the mustard because I don't really like mustard that much, and that would ruin it for me. So I did make a little bit of lobster salad with the mayonnaise. I did put a tiny bit of celery in it because I gotta have celery in my lobster roll. And I really, well, it wasn't a lobster roll. I don't eat bread, but I don't make lobster salad hardly ever. And on occasion, I'll get it, like if I go to the beach with my kids or one of my kids or whatever, and they're hungry and want to stop somewhere on the way home or whatever. I'm so tired of getting burger at a restaurant. And sometimes I'll get, just a steak or meat or whatever they have. But sometimes in the summertime, I'll see lobster salad, like fresh lobster salad, and I'll get it. And then I'll just pay the price a couple of days. My eyes will be puffy for a couple of days. It doesn't really affect me beyond that, though, so it's not really that big of a deal. And I don't do it that often. But where I'm going with this, and the reason I'm kind of dragging this out, is because for me personally, it's always related to what I've been eating. It can also happen if there's a lot of crap in the environment, if there's a lot of spraying going on, if there's just a lot of poison and toxins and crap. My body's very sensitive. I respond to a lot of different things. But where I'm going with this is that all of that lymphatic stuff is fine and great, but it's not a substitute for trying to stop doing what's causing it. Okay. So if your diet is causing you to have puffy eyes, then you might want to switch your diet up. Now, I babysit for my neighbor's kid from time to time when she gets stuck for a babysitter, and they live right up the street from us, and they had some cucumbers one day. I don't eat cucumbers. I don't eat plant foods as a rule. I might make an exception, like, a couple times a year with the olives and the olive salad, but a little bit of celery and that lobster, but I don't eat them because I end up with puffy eyes and sometimes puffy hands. So I was at their house and he wanted a snack. So I was getting him a snack and he wanted some cucumbers. So I cut up the cucumbers, and it was summertime and they were fresh cucumbers. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to have a little bit of cucumbers with a little bit of salt. Like, how bad can that be? They're flipping cucumbers. They're mostly water, right? So I ended up having some cucumbers, and I didn't even have that many. I had just like a couple handfuls of fresh cucumbers with some salt on them. Well, I woke up the next morning. I had puffy eyes. My hands were all puffy and swollen. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Like, from cucumbers. Some people think it's crazy, but people need to understand that plants have toxins in them. All plants contain toxins. It's just to what degree. And I have a metabolic disorder. It is likely MTHFR mutation with the whole glutathione thing, detoxification. I've never gone through all the testing, and I'm not going to. I did have a huge toxic cyst removed from my neck, my throat actually, when I was 19 years old, and it was loaded with poisons and toxins. So I have had this my whole life. I was born with this defect, basically. And I was a sick kid. I had a lot of issues as a kid. But what I can say is I'm feeling amazing now. That hardly ever happens to me now. It only happens when I eat garbage from my body. I'm not saying that's garbage for everybody's body. Everybody needs to do what works for them, right? But what I'm saying is, if you're someone who's waking up with puffy eyes and a puffy face all the time, you really want to look into that, right? Because it means that your body is under an excessive burden, and you want to try to relieve that burden. You know, there are people out there that say that carnivore is just a crutch, and it is not a crutch, okay? It is not a crutch for those of us who just do not have the ability to metabolize, eliminate, neutralize the toxins in plant foods. And there's some of us out there, okay? Our bodies are just, you know, for whatever reason, they're just not well equipped to handle it. And why that is, you know, I am not going to suffer for the rest of my life trying to figure out how to heal that or correct that or cure that, because I've spent the first 50 years of my life, not the first 50, but once I became a teenager, I started to really try to help myself when I became cognizant of how broken my body was, how absolutely broken my body was, and how many problems I had. I was like, screw this. And I started to become a lot more proactive, although I was a teenager. So, you know, I still did some crappy stuff too, but I was at least, you know, open-minded to trying to find things that could help me. And then once I went away to college and was older, I got into all sorts of natural healing stuff and became an herbalist and certified aromatherapist. I went on to get my advanced certification in that, started to look into diet and nutrition and how to heal myself, and went the plant way, which was a huge mistake that actually made me significantly worse. And then went back to omnivore, kind of the Weston Price stuff, and that wasn't enough for me either. And I did that for 15 years. And then I ended up finding carnivore, and it has been eureka for me. Eureka absolutely works for me, but I do consume a lot of raw milk, and raw milk for me is magic. And again, I don't tell anybody what to eat. I feel like my goal is to help people discover what works for them. I'm not here to tell people what to do. So that's important to know. So when people come to me with issues, I don't tell them to do what I do. That's not that's not the way it should work, right? It's like, you know, I simply help guide people to find what works for them through experimentation. And that's really what it boils down to. Experimenting to find what works best for your body. And, you know, I just try to guide and suggest and give ideas. And if they come to me with a certain set of things and I'm like, oh yeah, I've worked with like 5 or 6 other people that have had this, and this is what has helped them, so why don't you consider trying this? But I never put anything out there as an absolute, because there are no absolutes in life, and you start to figure that out pretty quickly when you start paying attention, and you realize that people sometimes need different things. So I would never say to somebody, if your eyes are puffy, you know, give up plant foods. No, but it might be it. It might be it. And why do so many people have these issues? Like, I look at a lot of women my age at 57. I don't take HRT. I don't take supplements except for a little bit of iodine, but I don't take anything. And I feel great. I have no aches and pains. I feel amazing. And so many women my age are literally decrepit and falling apart and taking HRT because they're miserable without it and have all of these symptoms. And again, why? Like, why? And it's like, wouldn't you want to correct and heal and restore and get your body into a state of balance? I don't know. I would think that would be the ideal solution. At least that's the ideal solution for me. So again, I don't have any puffy eyes today, which is wonderful, because yesterday I only had meat and milk, and I did have a little bit of clabber, which does have histamine in it. But what I find is that the longer I do this, the less and less and less my histamine acts up. Now, granted, I don't eat a ton of histamine things. I don't. And I don't eat a ton of things that trigger my histamine. But I do eat clabber, which is basically like yogurt on crack. It's basically kind of like a homemade yogurt, sort of, kind of. Not really, but it is. It's got significantly more bacteria in it. And I do that just to make sure that my gut is getting a lot of diverse bacteria. Because when you make it homemade, it's always different. Each batch is different, so you're not consuming the same bacteria every single day, like with a standard probiotic or standard yogurt. Yogurt's not even a lot of bacteria. It's only like a few strains. So to me, that's pointless. But I do that because over the years, I've had a lot of problems with my esophagus and yeah, my stomach. And yeah, I used to have nightmare problems, like nightmare, to the point where my esophagus was destroyed by the time I was 15 and was told I would need a replacement. But I'm 57 and I haven't had a replacement. I don't know what it looks like in there, but what I can tell you is it doesn't bother me. I'm good. Like, I'm good. I don't have any symptoms. I don't have any problems. And going carnivore has been lifesaver for that. Lifesaver. When I was in high school, I was literally living on medications and I was a mess. It wasn't making me worse. It was a shitstorm. It was a shitstorm. And I've talked about how there's been a couple of periods in my life where I was basically in like systemic meltdown. Like my body was just absolutely falling apart. There's been periods in my life where I've had symptoms of lupus. I had psoriasis. I had symptoms of ocular rosacea. I've had, again, the butterfly rash on my face, the nerve stuff, which partly related to Lyme too, but I feel so much better now from that. I had the oxalate damage, the esophageal stuff, cystitis. I used to have chronic cystitis and urinary tract infections. I just was crazy. Puffy eyes. I would wake up in the morning like all the time and have these puffy eyes, puffy face. I would get up in the morning and my feet would feel weird. My hands would swell. Like I was a mess. Like, and this was a huge part of my life. Like I was always that person. In high school, it was kind of a joke with my friends. Like it would be midnight and they'd be like, she's going to turn into a pumpkin. We need to get her home. Like it was kind of a joke because I just didn't have the staying power that everybody else around me had. Now, granted, I was extremely physical. I danced. I was extremely active, extremely physical. I never let it get me down and I pushed through, but I always felt like crap. Then I ended up getting mono, which was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. And I dealt with that relapsing on and on for years. And so it wasn't surprising when I ended up having all these symptoms of lupus because, interestingly enough, the mainstream world, people in the holistic world have always known that viruses and things can trigger these so-called autoimmune diseases. Well, what they call autoimmune, I don't really like that word because I don't think it fits. I don't think it really describes what is happening in the body fully. And I think it misleads people to think somehow your body just decided to attack itself. And no, nope, it's not that simple, okay? There's a lot more to it. And when you have infections and the body is too weak, too diseased, too damaged, too inflamed to be able to overcome that infection, it becomes like this chronic condition. And it can lead to lots of other things. And what I can say now is that I am significantly better than I've ever been in my life. And yeah, and having COPD on top of all of that. I ended up getting chemical pneumonia back in was I 30? Probably like my early 30s. I remember my daughter was little, really little, and ended up having chemical pneumonia, which led to COPD, which was terrible, absolutely horrible. It almost killed me. And yeah, so going through all of that too. So it's been a lot. It has been a lot. I have gone through a lot. So we'll see. But all I know now is that I feel amazing. And anybody thinks I'm going to go back to what I was doing before, never. Like never. Like I hear of these people in the carnivore community going back to carbs and I'm like, I would never do that. Been there, done that. And for my whole adult life, I played with a whole bunch of I tried veganism early on, disaster. Did that for 13 years. Then I went to Weston Price, which is omnivore, lots of meat, lots of plant foods, was not eating junk food, wasn't eating processed food hardly ever. Didn't raise my kids on all that processed garbage either. And it still did not work for me. I was better with Weston Price than I was vegan, but the mistakes I made with Weston Price was I was fermenting a lot, eating a lot of fermented things, drinking kombucha. And yes, I would ferment the kombucha so that it was pretty sour. I wasn't drinking it sweet. And all of those things just kind of accumulated to make my histamine thing worse. And it was getting worse and worse and worse doing that. And of course, eating a lot of high oxalate foods. So I belonged to a co-op, and she had a greenhouse and was growing greens all year round. So I was eating leafy greens all year round, and I was eating them pretty much every day. And I ended up giving myself severe oxalate poisoning. Now, I had always had oxalate problems because I started noticing the sores in my nose and started noticing lots of symptoms when I was about 18, 19 years old, because I always had a high oxalate diet because my grandparents had a garden. So I was always eating greens and things like that. Like, I always had a high oxalate diet. And then when I went carnivore, just carnivore and raw milk, that stuff went away. It was magical. Like, it was magical. And I was like, wow. So yeah, so I won't be going back. I won't be going back. So, all right. So this is my morning. Again, I didn't have anything that I needed to deal with this morning. It's just my basic stuff. And I wanted to share because I think it's important that people understand that any manipulative tool is just a piece of the puzzle. It's great. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Like, it feels good, it helps, it's supportive, it opens things up, it gets things flowing, but it's not going to correct the root cause. Okay, it's not going to correct the root cause. Now, when you look at a lot of the fascia work and people who are doing blocking and, you know, doing different things, and they're actually helping to kind of move through that fascia that has started to harden and started to crystallize, so the flow is not there. You know, the blocking is wonderful, but it doesn't actually replace action to try to prevent that from coming back. Because what caused it? It didn't happen because you weren't blocking. Blocking is compression therapy. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's compressing with a hard block or something hard. You're putting it into the fascia and you're causing the fascia to kind of, they call it melt after a while. It releases a little bit and helps blood flow and fluid flow and nutrient flow to the muscles, tissues, organs, and it's amazing. It's been life-changing for me. I actually fixed something in my leg that I had had for years. So it's amazing. But what caused the tissue to seize up in the first place? You want to look at that? I gotta go. I'll talk to you later. Signing out.